Hello, good day to you. My name is Greg Scully. I'm with 501 Commons, and I'm very excited to have you here today for our next training in the Give Big training series we're doing. This one's on Stewardship Strategy. And before we get going on that, I just want to share a little bit about 501 Commons and who we are. So 501 Commons is a nonprofit, and we serve other nonprofits in a wide variety of services like finance, HR, back office, database administration. We also do strategic planning and facilitation, all sorts of different topics we can do. And also we've got free services like our information referral line, which is a 30-minute free call you can have at any point in time. So wide variety of things. If you're not familiar with us, please go to our website, and it's 501commons.org. Let's get on to the program of the day. Today, we have our series on the Give Big, and our trainer today is Ariel Glassman. I am going to let her introduce herself, and I want to thank you all for coming again. So Ariel, take it away.
Thank you, Greg. Hi, everybody. I'm Ariel Glassman. If you've taken some of these workshops in the past for previous years of Give Big, we may have met each other virtually or in person at some point. It's great to be back. I am a consultant in fundraising, and for about the last 20 years, I've been a fundraiser, and I've been a consultant for 10. And I think for about 5 of the last 6 years or so, I've taught these workshops and am active on the ground, doing Give Big and other types of year-end and giving day campaigns with lots of clients. So I want you to have confidence that the information you're about to see is relevant and right-sized, and I know that of which I speak. So you can learn more about me at commongreat.us, that and my team members. That's what we do. I won't lean in too hard to that because I'd love to get moving to our content. The very first thing I'd like to do just briefly is to acknowledge that both 501 Commons offices and where I am broadcasting from today are in the homelands of the Coast Salish and Duwamish people. And so 501 Commons has made a commitment to acknowledging this, and so have I. And our full statement you can see in front of us. So let us begin. What is our agenda today? So today's all about stewardship. So what is it? Why should you do it? There are some new tools that should help with the back-end Mighty Cause platform that we have now. Putting together all the pieces of your strategy. We'll actually throw some ideas out there as well. Then I want to actually hone in on the concept of time frames and sort of how you might be stewarding donors over time. And finally, just a little look at potentially how you might scale or even automate some of this stuff with technology tools. So let us dive right in. Stewardship, what is it? So I like to define it. You'll see definitions all over the internet that are different, but I like to define it as the care and feeding of your donors through the demonstration of gratitude and impact. And we do it because trust is the foundation of fundraising. Trust, connection, commitment, stewardship activities accomplish all of that. And they are the key to donor retention. You're going to hear that word a lot today. And this kind of activity where you are engaging, informing, all of those things, and not just asking, not just event inviting. That's the stuff we're talking about today. And that's really the key to the long term with your donors. So a good way to think about it is like an iceberg. So what people see often in fundraising work is the tip of the iceberg, and that's the solicitation pieces, of which Give Big is one. But really 90% of it, sort of under the surface of the ocean, is this stewardship, engagement, relationship building pieces. So I just wanted to name that it's really, truly critically important. And to make the most of Give Big, it's not just making the most of the solicitation moment, it's understanding where it fits in to the journey your donors are on, much of which is something is related to stewardship. So let's talk about the platform updates. Just like the matching functionality, if anybody here was at the matching workshop a couple weeks ago, the Mighty Cause platform brings with it some new things you can do. So one thing I want to point out is they have reporting features that are very robust, and very specifically, they have a new retention report tool. This is a screenshot from the back end if you haven't got in to see it yet. Creates a very easy way to look at donor retention across your campaigns over time. And very specifically, it's makes it super easy to identify donors from past years that you have retained or you have not retained. You can very specifically say what you're looking for. And we'll talk a little bit about why you might use that functionality a little later on. The other piece of new functionality I want to call out is the opportunities. So there is now the opportunity to put opportunities like volunteering or event attendance, is particularly even if you're having like a virtual or live event around GiveBIG, you can put that information there and they're searchable, and people can even you can link to registration. So this actually has now become a clearinghouse for engagement and not just giving. And again, we'll talk a little bit about why that might be important. Volunteer opportunities in particular are a great way to steward and engage donors after their gifts. So let's now talk about strategy. And we're really gonna go for the building blocks, like who, what, when, how, which I think we all know the why. But we know what are used for donor segments for you to look at in terms of how you might steward different types of donors who have different behavior. What actually are there different types of stewardship? Yes, there are. We'll talk about them. Timelines and channels, right? Like, this is an online campaign. Should you avoid direct mail? Let's see. So let's start with segmentation and the type of stewardship. So segments they're groups of people who either share a common giving behavior or some other aspect that you can really separate into a group. The goal being of which, of course, you're going to give them slightly different messaging or maybe even different stories altogether, or maybe add more personalization elements to one segment or another. And so the really common ones that people will think about are like top dollar donors, your most loyal donors, your new donors. Those are classics. And, top dollar is, of course, going after stewarding donors whose gifts are making a big difference right now. Most loyal is going after stewarding people who've been with you for a long time. And, new obviously is new. And that's important because we know that giving days historically, about 30% of your donors on a giving day, like Giving Tuesday or GiveBIG, will be new to you. And so paying special attention to those new donors to help them get to that second gift later is a really good idea. I also wanted to name that there might be other types of segmentation you can do based on your mission. For example, I might look at my GiveBIG donors and cross-check them with my subscribers if I'm a performance arts organization that offers a subscription season. And I might want to acknowledge in my stewardship, oh my gosh, you're one of the X number of our faithful subscribers who also gave on GiveBIG. You are so awesome. That's a better message than thank you for your donation. And it feels more personal. So that's one really concrete example of how you might think outside the box on segmentation. Volunteers could be a great segment, and it just depends if your organization offers those things. So think creatively about that. And when I say types of stewardship, I actually put stewardship in 3 categories. This is my personal approach. I don't know that you'll see this as like conventional wisdom online, but it's always worked for me. And when I make stewardship engagement charts for clients, we really do place activities in each of these categories, and that's impact, gratitude, and FaceTime. So impact is, what did your money do? Gratitude is, we love you, thank you. And FaceTime is, let's spend time together. And that one's hard in COVID. Hopefully it's getting a little easier. But we want to make sure that we have got, at least in this COVID time, the elements of the first 2 in our stewardship plan, because it really works best when everybody gets information and love in response to their giving. Let's talk about timelines. And I know I'm moving quickly through this. That's kind of my style. We'll move relatively quick through this. I want to leave plenty of time at the end for questions, and they don't just have to be for about stewardship. They can be about anything GiveBIG related, since this is the last live workshop we're doing. But let's talk timelines. So I want you to think about this in 3 basic timeframes. Instant stewardship, which is like what's happening during the day, but that's very specific, and we'll talk more about it, what it specifically is. Short-term stewardship, like what are you going to do with donors, say the month after GiveBIG in that time period? What about the long term? What about 6 months, or right up a year from now when we're getting ready for GiveBIG next year? We want to be looking at all these different kind of time scales and planning touches that will keep you top of mind and keep you present with your donors between now and the next GiveBIG. I also want to point out something that is made possible by the new retention reports that we're seeing in the Mighty Cause background. And this is the idea of some sort of active stewardship and engagement with your board, potentially, or even your staff, your ED, during the event itself. So for example, at the end of day one, you could use those reporting tools to identify the donors who gave last year and the year before, but who haven't yet. And you can take that segment and you can say, hey, board members, or hey, ED, call, email, whatever, those people today, right? So we can actually use these tools in real time. And that's kind of stewarding the engagement of your board as part of your sort of tool set for this. It's a little bit of a different way to look at stewardship, but I wanted to name that retention report isn't just a thing you might look at now or after. Look at it during the day of too. It's going to give you like marching orders on, aha, look at those 3 donors who've given the last couple of years. They have not given, we've got to go get those, and to make a specific plan. We want to touch on channels and media as well. So GiveBIG is an online campaign. It always has been. And I actually think that one of the most important things GiveBIG has done for this community back when it was started in 2011 was it gave organizations who did not have a strong online giving presence a reason to get with the program, get up to speed, had stretch goal, all of that stuff. So this has always been an online bonanza, but we have a lot of data in the sector that shows that when you only engage someone on the channel in which they gave, you will leave money on the table. So we should be blending in some mailed aspects to this if possible. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you can't, but I get questions like, oh, should I bother with mail around GiveBIG? I would if it's within the realm of your budget and your staff capacity. So, I mean, a postcard could be a great example. You could do thank you postcards. You could, I mean, probably you'll send a traditional acknowledgement letter. That's one thing. So I would just encourage you to think about all those pieces. I would also encourage you to think about balancing scale with relationships. And again, digital, it's so much easier to do this kind of mass communication with many people and have it feel a little more personal. But even if you can't do that, even if you pick 3 or 5 donors, whether they're loyal donors from one, like look at your segments, pick one person from every segment who's been really stalwart and make sure they're getting something really personal. If all the rest of it is automated or if it's automatic in response to the giving, things like that. And I'm going to encourage you to use video. It doesn't necessarily have to be new video. And the data you see here is not directly from GiveBIG, but again, it's from sector research overall in crowdfunding and online giving campaigns, that campaigns with video do about twice as well as those without. They're actually much more likely to succeed and meet their goals. So you may not have the time or capacity to put together like a very specific video for GiveBIG, but if you've got a couple well-performing videos on your YouTube channel, or if you've got a mission video made in the last year or two, it'd be great to put them on your profile because you will see a bounce from there. If you do not have it, I would actually encourage you to make one. And the advice I'm going to give may feel counterintuitive, but it really doesn't have to be shiny or super polished. You know, when we're thinking about capacity and everything you have to do for GiveBIG between now and then, we want you to find the right balance. So even if you're using video, not just on the campaign platform, let's say you don't have a video on your campaign, but might you record like a quick phone video, thank you from your ED, and have her like flip the camera and then, oh, all your staff, hi, thank you. Even something simple like that, something very DIY feeling. Actually, we're finding that that is as impactful, if not more, than things that are hyper polished with subtitles and, you know, fades with graphics and things like that. It's really overkill. So we know that campaigns succeed more. Your stewardship will also succeed more, and it doesn't have to be hard to use video with it. So we've talked about segments, what kind of stewardship you might do, the timelines on which you might execute, and some of the channels and the media that you might use. How do we tie this all together? I like to create a stewardship matrix. And this is like a mini version of the work that I do with clients on a fuller sort of stewardship and engagement process. But identify your segments. So here we come back again. Before you can do this, you have to kind of sit down and say, who are my groups? What are the behaviors that I want to look at and reward or acknowledge when I communicate with people? And what are the things I could do? So I don't want anyone to take the allotments in this particular chart as gospel. They're just an example, but it does show you how you can really build a journey. Okay, Ariel keeps harping on new donors. Great. You can really craft that journey very intentionally. Ariel keeps harping on loyal donors. Okay, craft them their own journey. And I would actually include peer-to-peer fundraisers in your stewardship efforts here. Not only are they probably making their own gifts, the fact that they are inviting their networks to join you is worth stewarding on its own terms, especially if you're seeing peer-to-peer be a more successful part of your strategy over time. So we'll talk about each of these little ideas. These are all going to show up in our ideas section, but I really encourage you to organize your thinking this way. And frankly, it even allows you to just be very, very tactically efficient after GiveBIG, where you know what your segments are. Great, pull that data and just go down the line. Who are my new? Who are my loyal? And make it happen, because sometimes stewardship, the momentum of GiveBIG is over, you're all tired, we put our all in, and it's sort of like, I know I got to steward. And this kind of segmentation and charting it out should really help you just like get through the finish line with it, even though you're probably a little exhausted. Okay, let's talk about some ideas for stewardship. So my first point is to use unique aspects of your mission to stand out. That doesn't just show up in segmentation, it can show up in what you're doing. So in the arts, again, COVID safe, meet an artist, get invited to a special rehearsal. Are you an animal shelter? Schedule a puppy play date, even a virtual puppy play date, or offer a volunteer opportunity. And that goes really nicely with that new feature that is, courtesy of Mighty Cause, our new platform this year, that allows you to like literally present volunteer opportunities to people while they're engaging with you, GiveBIG, and even to sign up for them. So that one really aligns. If your organization has volunteer opportunities, that's a really strong one. I would do it. If you have any possible volunteer opportunity that you think those folks might be interested in, do it. Another key point I want to make is to stand out with effort, because in a digital world, analog stands out. It's like what's old is new again, right? All of a sudden, handwritten thank you notes, these used to be the jam, then they went out of favor, now they're the jam again, because very few people actually use that kind of touch anymore. And you can actually pre-prep these and make it easy. This is a great task for interns or a development committee to sit there and sort of even looking at some of the donors who always give to you and like pre-writing some of those cards, or writing out the content, but leaving the dear name blank until, you know what I mean? There's a lot of ways that you can take the effort and try to minimize it while still getting the value of the perceived value of something like that. Another little aspect there is something experiential. And what do I mean by that? So I actually got hired for a job earlier in my career by a woman who had been to an event that I had thrown at a previous employer. And she actually said, this, the thing I'm about to tell you, she said, this is one of the reasons I hired you. I had actually, we had done an event, so it could be similar. An event that had funded some renovation work and some improvements inside the building for an arts organization. And I made a very nice like collage of images of like before and after, and I hole punched them and I tied them together with a little ribbon. So when someone opened it, it wasn't just like, oh, what is this? They had to like undo the ribbon, and then they sort of opened it and it felt more like this gift. So that's very, very specific. And again, you have to have the capacity to do it. Like I definitely sat there watching seasons of Buffy, just putting those together after the event. But if you have capacity, something like that will help you stand out. And I've actually had other people mention that stewardship piece to me, and this was like over 10 years ago. Oopsies. Personalized video. We will talk a little bit more about how you might scale this. But again, you have one thank you video you could make. What if there were a couple? What if your longtime loyalist donors got a very special message from your ED that says, you're getting this video because you've given to us for the last 5 years in a row, and that is incredible, and I need you to know that we know it and we notice you, as opposed to thank you so much for your gift. And I would also give you, encouragement to engage a board. Handwritten thank you notes is a great way to do it, but also having a thankathon, and that's more of a phone call type of procedure, which seems not super popular these days, but that's solicitation by phone is going the way of the dodo, but engaging people by phone is not. And I personally have done this plenty of times. I'm on the board of Teen Ticks, and every year after GiveBIG, I get assigned 5 donors to call, and most of them it goes straight to voicemail. But even leaving that voicemail and them hearing from me as a board member, it's a step up. It'll help you stand out, and it'll help you give your board members something to do. Because I know sometimes we all struggle with how do we engage our board members in a way that feels productive and relevant to our overall plan and not something you have to spend time on that might not actually be in alignment with everything else you're doing. Now I want to come to the notion of instant stewardship. So if you have come to previous workshops, you have definitely heard me talk about this. So this whole premise is based on the notion that there's an emotional half-life for gratitude of about 24 hours. So there's results that show that when you say thank you to someone, every day that you wait, it halves the impact of the thank you on that person. So if I thank you tomorrow for something you did today, that's actually going to be 4 times as powerful as if I thanked you 2 days from now. And it will be 8 times as powerful as if I wait until Friday. This is one of those things that, I mean, the data really also doesn't lie. There's another statistic to look at, which is that a lot of field research says that if somebody gets a personal thank you within 48 hours, they're 4 times more likely to make a second gift, right? Again, I come back to, you're going to get new donors. How are you going to keep them? How can you treat them specially? If you can accomplish that, even without immediately responding to everyone, that's great. So instant stewardship in my mind is, can you commit to a 10-minute email thank you window? So when somebody makes a donation, can you or someone else on your team who's getting those notifications in their inbox write back? I have timed this with certain clients. I had a client who was like, yep, for the hour of 2 to 3 p.m., I had a 90-second interval for this. And I was just like, whoa, okay, that's really aggressive. But even something like this, I want to challenge you to see if you can do that. And it's also okay if you can't, right? It's okay if you're low capacity or you only work part-time and there's no one else who helps staff development, or your program team is too busy that day and they can't help you do this kind of stuff. It's totally okay if you can't. But this is like supercharged personal connected stewardship. And this is an email from a real human. This is not an automatic receipt email. This is from your inbox and you took a peek in the database to see more about this donor before you sent the note. I've also been on the receiving end of this, and it was actually really fun to get a taste of my own medicine. So. And then team, again, if you're finding yourself working solo on this and you don't have a team to help you, that is okay. But if you're going to run a really robust stewardship effort for GiveBIG, it probably behooves you to find a buddy who, gets permission from whoever their supervisor is to spend their workday helping, whether it's writing notes or doing these instant stewardship emails. Being responsive that quickly can sometimes be better for more than one person to do. So that's like the day of the event, but what about these longer timescales? So almost any of the ideas we've talked about will work in a 30-day window post GiveBIG, and many of them might also work longer out. So again, some of these things do not have to be sort of time sensitive, and you can arrange them almost in any combination that you like over a certain period of time. But here are a few very concrete suggestions that I would make in terms of the timing. So number one, I would put all new donors to your organization that came through GiveBIG on a drip campaign if you can. And that's an automated sequence of emails that you sort of create upfront, and then it's sort of a set it and forget it. Somebody does a thing, usually they're added to your list, and boom, all of a sudden they'll get very carefully sequenced. So we can't really dive into the details on best practices for drip campaigns and the time that we have today. But if you've got MailChimp, if you've got Constant Contact, any of those really typical email marketing programs we almost all have access to, they can accomplish that for you. So think, again, new donors in particular. And I would also recommend sending an impact update to all GiveBIG donors in 6 months. And that happens to be November, which is very convenient if these are folks who also make gifts at your end of year campaign. And we see a lot of that. A lot of your Giving Day donors are not, some of them are GiveBIG people. I know people who identify that way, but a lot of your donors are going to be making multiple gifts for years. So that timing works really well. And I would also say, come back and do a touch for those people about a year from now, as we're getting ready for the next GiveBIG. Make sure that you're closing the loop and acknowledging them again and again. That will just set you up to succeed. Scaling and automating stewardship. So personalized email at scale can be a really important tool for being able to send lots of messages to lots of people, but have it appear perfectly as if it is from you, because it is. So what I mean are, Outlook can accomplish this. If you guys are on a Microsoft system, there are also extensions for Gmail that can help you do this. You can create a spreadsheet of people, and it can have as many variable data fields as you like. And you can create a set of emails that are like, hey, first name, oh my gosh, thank you so much for your gift of X dollars on day 2 or day 1 of GiveBIG. That meant so much to us. Even one more custom sentence. Da, 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 da. I mean, you could even just stick to hi first name and have a, an email that just goes to them and isn't necessarily acknowledging a lot of other data points. Even that is going to feel really good. You can't get to those kind of results with MailChimp or Constant Contact because they have very different deliverability rates. They're going to end up in most people's promotions and updates tab. So I would encourage you guys, not just for GiveBIG, if you're not already using these tools to accomplish personalization at scale throughout your fundraising work, definitely experiment and even invest, because it really helps. And personalized video at scale, we talked about some video. We talked about some kind of grassroots, more DIY ways to approach it, that it doesn't have to be shiny and polished. There are actually software platforms that help you accomplish personalized video at scale. And, the way you can film that is, let's say you've got 10 people you want to send a thank you video to. You can go, I won't get into in the weeds. Maybe some of you have used ThankView or been on a training for them. That's the one we all know the best. But it allows you to kind of rapid fire go through and actually create a personal message to people at scale and get it out into the world, even with like its own landing page and things like that. These are tools that have typically been used by like university advancement departments with tons of resources. They are creeping into the small and mid-sized nonprofit market. They're starting to create pricing tiers for that. So again, even if you don't do this for GiveBIG, I might suggest looking into something like this. And we talked about drip campaigns in terms of the timeline. Send something right after, send something 2 weeks then, and then 3 months from now, or whatever you choose. So that's what this is. It's an automated sequence to thank and engage with evergreen content, right? So this is something that if you've got really high performing blog posts or things you want to make sure every donor knows about that you accomplished, even if it was last year, this is a great way to kind of put some of that evergreen content and help somebody warm up to you and get to know you over time without hard sells of, more asks before they are engaged. And another tool is SMS. And this is probably the one that I hear folks kind of experimenting with the most right now. You may not have one, that's okay. If you do have an SMS tool and you are doing outbound marketing and messaging with it, I might consider it. I think it's probably the least likely that any of us in this room are kind of, again, it's sort of a starting journey in our sector with SMS engagement. So it may not be likely that you will have any activity in this way, but think about it. It's another compliment. Text messages get opened way more than emails do. 97% get read within 3 minutes. Deliverability is skyrocketed in that case. So, okay. And before we go to Q&A, but wait, what about 2021's donors? As you heard me say, in terms of thinking about forward stewardship for this year's donors, it is not too late right now to put a stewardship touch together for everybody who gave to you last year and GiveBIG. And I would go back to 2020 as well. You still have time. It doesn't have to be fancy. And I would focus, if you're low on capacity for this, I would focus on, again, people whose first gift to your organization was through GiveBIG last year and getting that new donor retention rate up. And I would focus on people who have 3 years of consecutive giving to GiveBIG specifically. These are your loyal partners. I'll use an example. I am on the board of TeenTix, and we have what we call our GiveBIG superstars. So every year before GiveBIG, they will pull a list of everyone who's donated to every single GiveBIG campaign they've ever run, dating back to when TeenTix started participating in GiveBIG. And each of those people gets outreach that acknowledges that, hey, thank you again, you're a GiveBIG rockstar. I don't know if you know, but you've given to the last 8 GiveBIG campaigns for us. It's coming up again. We hope we're going to see you there. It's not a complex message, but those people, they're your low-hanging fruit. They're your ones who are going to come through right away. And if you heard me in the match challenge talking about how important early momentum is, that could be really helpful. Like, that's a momentum strategy in terms of who you're stewarding directly before the event. So, time for Q&A. So feel free to ask any questions regarding stewardship but also I want to open the floor to other questions. If it's something super technical about the back end of Mighty Cause, we might have to get back to you, or perhaps Greg will have the answer if I don't. But I'll stop sharing screen and we can dive in. Okay. You can feel free to write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and Greg or I will sort of call on you.
So Ariel, I'll start here. This is Greg. While we're waiting for others to formulate their questions, can you, the matrix, just those items, you don't have to back up to that or show the screen or anything like that, but of those things, it's, how do you kind of prioritize? There's a lot of stuff there. You've got the instant thank you and you've got the board call and all these things. Do you kind of have to do all of them or just like take a mix of them?
That's a great question. So I'm happy to go back and look at the slide while we talk about this. Honestly, the beauty of a planning process like this is you can scale it to whatever makes sense for you. If you are an all volunteer run organization, you might have 2 segments and 2 things you're going to do for stewardship, right? And this could basically be a 4x4 grid. It could be a lot more complicated. If you're Seattle Public Library Foundation and you're raising $150,000 on GiveBIG, and you have a really sophisticated fundraising program, it could probably look more complex. So what I want to encourage you guys to do is, especially if stewardship behavior is newer to you and your fundraising program, start small and experience the victories that come from that, because you will get feedback immediately that is going to show you the value of this. And even if you only do one thing to every person, that's going to get you farther than thinking of a big complex plan and not necessarily being able to execute in a timely fashion, or not actually being able to get to all those segments or whatnot. I would rather have you do one thing really well and learn the value of it in real time over the course of those donor relationships than like over program yourselves. Okay, we got some. Aha, what is the desired length for videos in the use digital media section? This is a juicy one. So it used to be conventional wisdom that great fundraising videos would be 3.5 minutes, maybe 4. And there's some really interesting data that like Kickstarter does a great job of doing some data platform analysis and doing some research. Their latest research shows that the most effective video length for crowdfunding or kickstarting or online giving campaign scenarios is 90 to 120 seconds. So we have like halved the suggested time, and that's people's attention spans. We're living in a doom scrolling age. Video is so much more important. It's all so much a bigger part of all of our lives than it used to be. And that's why that has happened. Hopefully that's an answer that you like hearing, because it's not hard to fill up 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, even with something DIY. Awesome. Where do you add volunteer opportunity info? So this feature, I believe, is getting activated this week. It may not be crossed over into your specific back end yet, but I believe it should be active by the end of the week. And maybe that's something that Greg can follow up about after. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll ask you guys a question. And this is something like, again, feel free to jump in or put it in the chat, but like, what is the best stewardship touch you've ever come up with for your organization? Like, I'm really curious if you guys have examples from other fundraising efforts that have worked really well that you could apply. Ooh, think about that while I answer Roland's question in the chat. He says, GiveBIG is big. All of us will be asking and thanking a lot in a month. So how do we balance the need to communicate with the understanding that folks' inboxes may be inundated? So a couple things. Number one, that is the point of using tools for email merge, like you can in Outlook and Gmail, because those get delivered much more so than like most organizations will be sending a MailChimp or a Constant Contact out that half their people are not even going to see. So to a certain degree, we feel like we're shouting and the whole sector is shouting at all our donors those couple days. Yes and no. Half the people are not going to see every email you send just because it's coming from a mass mail merge email marketing vendor. And they have lower deliverability rates and they end up in your promotions tab. The other thing is that if your communications are relevant and they're really delivering value and you have a good subject line, I wouldn't worry about folks feeling overwhelmed or inundated. When something is relevant and great, they forget that it's part of a lot of other stuff. And this is a general sort of approach that I take, where I think we're all a little overcautious about feeling like we are over communicating with people, when in reality, because of the way email is delivered and deliverability and just pieces like that, we are almost all under communicating in terms of how many things is somebody on our list actually going to see, because what we send is not necessarily what is seen, which kind of stinks, but that's the way of it. So that's a general thing, like not just related to GiveBIG, but I think we're all under communicating a little bit in that regard. And finally, what I will say is your peer-to-peer fundraisers could help you out with this if you are doing peer-to-peer. If a board member has a peer-to-peer page, ask them to help steward, right? And that donor is going to open an email that says thank you from the person they know, more than coming from the executive director of your organization, unless they know them really well, or like the name of your organization as the sender. So there's a way to activate folks to help you cut through that noise as well and have it feel more personal. Again, when it's personal and relevant, people don't care that it's part of a lot. Sure, of course. Watching the chat happen, you're welcome. Has anybody, thought of an idea for stewardship that they've executed their organization that they're willing to share with the group? I know you probably didn't tie a bow and things, but I'm sure it will be a delightful example nonetheless. Here, I'll stop sharing now. Okay. Are there folks actually on this webinar for whom the concept of stewardship feels very new? I'm really curious about that. If that's the case, a lot of what we talked about here is not just relevant for GiveBIG. It's really extracted from best practices of stewardship applied to a context like GiveBIG. But if this stuff is all new to you, just realize that this information is valuable and valid outside of this context as you move forward in your fundraising. And if there aren't any more questions, Greg, I might turn it back to you.
I think we're good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your joining the stewardship presentation by Ariel, and we are really happy that you're joining GiveBIG this year. Again, my name is Greg Scully with 501 Commons, and we do thank you on behalf of Ariel and the whole 501 Commons and GiveBIG team. Thank you. Thank you. Please stay in touch. We'll be sending out more information about GiveBIG as we get along, and we really, really appreciate your participation. Thanks for coming today. Bye
Thanks,
now.
everyone.